All right, welcome back again. Today we're going to be talking through the number of different mistakes that you can make when you are coming into a marathon. So it's race week, you're in the taper. I'd say a lot of the mistakes and key points that we want to think about come from fueling. So that's going to be a key thing that we talk about today. But as a whole, you've spent 12, 14, 16 weeks really building your engine. Now we just need to bring everything together. We just need to land the plane nice and smoothly into the runway. And we need to avoid some key things that ruin your entire marathon build. So we'll get into that today. Really, we just don't want you to essentially outsmart yourself, outwork yourself in that final section of the taper. And these are a lot of mistakes that I've made myself, other athletes make all the time. Some of them are super common that can cost you your entire race when you've already done the work. So let's not do that. Let's dive into things. My name is Tom. I'm a coach here at Team RunRun, Tom Nobbs. I've raced a 2:12 in the marathon, 63 minutes in the half marathon. I've done 3 official marathons, quite a few marathons in training as well for long runs. And so I'll be covering a lot of things that I've done within experience and things that I would recommend avoiding come race day, as I feel like my pattern is pretty nailed down up to this point. So I want to share all of this. You guys can drop some comments or anything that you have in the comments below, and I can also share some of my feedback there as well. All right, so mistake number one, this would be panicking during the taper. So I think the number one most common thing is that people get to the taper, they feel sluggish, they feel heavy, they feel flat, and immediately think that something is wrong. They've done something wrong, and they start to spiral and compare themselves to others, compare themselves to how they felt previously, earlier on in the build versus now. And so a lot of the time, we just need to continue to execute training, stick to routine, understand a few elements in terms of fueling, but also why this taper is supposed to feel so weird, and kind of just continue on with our day. So we don't want to change too much when we come into a taper, and that's so important. You know the key levers of what helps you recover coming into race day, and that'd be sleep, good fueling, nailing your workout efforts. And if you just focus on those things, talk to your coach, you're going to have a great time. Again, it's supposed to feel weird. You're essentially reducing volume and intensity so that your body can really super compensate for the stress that it's going to have on race day. So very key point there. When you feel off, your body is, adjusting in terms of, muscle tension, muscle elasticity, energy levels. Your metabolism is a little bit out of whack. It's expecting a lot more in terms of calories, protein, movement. Your circadian rhythm might be off as well. And so all these things are perfectly natural. I think one of the common mistakes underneath common mistake number one is just having too much energy and not knowing what to do with it. So you might be going for walks or hikes. I see athletes that are trying to log bike rides because they're like, I can't run more than I want to in the day, and so I'm going to bike because that's technically not running mileage. So I think the key mistake is not doing too little, but doing too much. And so just understanding that rest is a productive thing to do during the taper. And then I think just in terms of fueling, coming into that taper, for the marathon specifically, it's quite a big deload, or it's a multi-week taper. And so I think just understanding that you need to listen to your body. So food is fuel. Food is a way for us to enjoy, our life, socialize and all that stuff. And so, what you really want to do is just listen to your body when it's hungry and it's giving you those hunger signals. You buy into that. And otherwise, also understanding that possibly when it's a lighter training day, you may need a little bit less of certain macros. So you may need a touch less of carbs, but that doesn't mean you have to eat less. I think that's the ultimate thing we don't want to do, is just trying to force ourselves to eat less and less. And still understanding that we want to fill our plate. So maybe fill your plate with more protein, You still have some carbs. You never want to go keto. That is the worst thing possible, especially in the taper week. So keep some carbs in your plate. Just instead of it covering like 2/3 of your plate, it covers half or a third of your plate. And then you can fill up the rest of your plate with, vegetables and protein. So on those lighter training days during the taper, you can kind of focus on a few of those things and just understand that everything's normal. You're going to be fine. Just keep to the routine. Talk to your coach. So yeah, I think one of the last key points just to touch on within the taper is like a well-executed taper, 2 to 3 weeks with the proper periodization of workouts and the timing of those workouts. But just a well-executed taper as a whole can improve performance by 2 to 3%. So for a 3-hour marathoner, that would be 4 to 5 extra minutes cut off. And so we do want to buy into this. This is beneficial. And I think even that percentage could be a little light based on what you're doing in training versus what you can accomplish on race day. I think you can go much farther and have greater time to exhaustion when you go through that taper process as well. All right, on to mistake number 2. So mistake number 2, not carb loading properly or not at all. So I think the main mistake is people treat carb loading as this massive pasta dinner. So it's either they have this conceptualization where it's the night before, I'm just going to eat as much pasta as possible. That's cool, but that's kind of more like 30% of what's actually needed. Or I think the other end of the spectrum is they skip carb loading period, just thinking that they don't need that, or they're taking their gels on race day. So we need to be hitting all of the boxes along the way of, the taper, fueling properly, supporting ourselves, not being in a calorie deficit, getting to the start line, getting to the final 2 days, carb loading, then also having our breakfast, and then fueling with lots of carbs during the marathon as well. So it's kind of this whole succession of key things that we have, and we just need to check those boxes along the way. Realistically, your glycogen stores are fuel tank. I think we talked about in the previous video. It's just that at marathon effort, those stores last about 90 to 120 minutes. And so again, we are trying to top up our glycogen stores ahead of the actual race beginning. A recent paper this year actually found that the liver holds about 120 grams of carbs for blood sugar maintenance alone. And so if you don't fill the tank before the gun goes off, you're starting the race in a deficit, and your time to exhaustion won't be as great. And a lot of research as well supports that a compressed carb load, so 1 to 2 days max before the race, is pretty optimal. So I think if you're more on the 3-4 hour marathon range or above, 2 days is like definitely the go-to. And then, if you're an elite, so I'm talking like sub 220, that carb load can be more on 1.5 one day before. I kind of go by a 1.33 day carb load. So like, I think the 2 nights before for dinner, definitely topping up on carbs, the day before going really heavy on carbs, and then coming into race day. But I think for a lot of marathoners, the 2 days is very sufficient. 4 to 5 hour marathoners, I would even go with like a 2.5 day carb load, but I'm not a sports dietitian, but from the research, 1 to 2 days is optimal. And then any sort of micro adjustments past that is, up to your own experimentation. And I would definitely consult with your coach on how to approach that as well. All right, within that carb load, I think we can get a little bit more scientific in terms of how we approach the carb load. Again, we want to be consistent with this. Like this is science. We do have the research to support this. You can calculate out how many carbs you're taking before a marathon and just carbon copy that same sort of meal plan coming into your next marathon. And so then we can isolate each variable of, your training, your racing, your execution on the day, your mental performance and fueling, and then we can see, which one do we need to improve on? So if we keep fueling very consistent and make micro changes, we can use that plan again and again. So again, 7 to 10 grams of carbs per kg of body weight the day before, that's pretty key. I do have a sort of sample plan. If you do comment below, I can send you over what that sort of looks like in sort of a breakdown. For 70 kg runner, we're just using that as a random average, even though it's probably not average. That's 560 to 840 grams of carbs in a single day. Actually, that's more for the 8 to 10 grams or 8 to 12 grams of carbs within a single day. So I think it's actually a little bit lower for if we're going by these 7 grams. But again, 7 to 10 grams, you guys can do the math. And that does require some planning. It's not just having a bigger dinner. A lot of sports dietitians will also recommend practicing a mini carb load the day before some of your big long runs, not just on race week. Just a caveat to that point is that as we're doing this massive carb load, even if we're eating clean foods low in fiber, all this stuff, that can be a lot for your body to process. And so we just want to make sure that that goes through our body in an efficient way and doesn't lead to any complications come race day. Right. So just scrolling through a few points here. Yeah, so I think myself, I typically have ice cream every single night before, before my big workouts. So, eating higher carbs the day before any kind of 30K workout or 30K long run or something like that, that allows us to really train our gut to figure out what sits well and what doesn't. I'm probably not doing ice cream the day before race day, but higher carbs being something that I am testing out during training the day before my hard long runs and long workouts to know what sits and what doesn't. Really, everything we're doing in training, we're rehearsing for the race week. And we're doing so and remembering that, logging that, talking about that with our coach during the actual build. As we're coming into this carb load, so coming back to the carb load, we're 1 to 2 days before. The day before in particular, I really can't emphasize this enough, we want to keep fat and fiber low. I'd say fat is, okay, definitely up to you. I would sort of minimize that a little bit. Fiber, I would reduce that by about 50%. So this is, that 50% number that's coming from sports dietitians that I've worked with and chatted with before. I personally tried to cut out all fiber the day before my race. I don't want this to be some sort of influencer clip where you say, oh, this guy said this, I'm going to do this. It's very, very challenging to do. So just try to minimize it. I think that's kind of the go-to as we're coming into the race. What that tends to look like, you might be cutting out vegetables, cutting out fiber. We're not having chia seed puddings the day before. And a lot of that high fat in foods really slows gastric emptying. So this means like lower glycogen loading, so harder to carb load, higher GI risk on race day if things are just sitting in your stomach but haven't been fully digested or processed. And yeah, I think that's sort of the overall sum of what we're trying to focus on. Another really key point. So I typically use a carb mix, so a carb fluid mix for my bottles on race day. And the other thing that I've typically done in the carb load and taper is having a few scoops of this. I think I would even have 50 grams of carbs from the high carb mix in the morning, 50 grams in the evening, and that allows me to really hit my total KPIs, my macros in the carb load without really having to stuff my face and hating the sight of pasta. So a lot of this stuff really does help. You can get sports drinks, you can get even some sodas if they're agreeable with your stomach. You can get Gatorade, you can get Morden drink mixes. There's a number of really solid brands. And I think if you're part of Team RunRun, they should be linked on our website. There should be some discounts there, or your coach can definitely recommend some as well. So again, liquid numbers really help you hit your total carb amounts for that final 1 to 2 days, and just really top up your total grams of carbs when solid foods don't totally get you there. The other thing that I'll have is gummy bears as a snack. So It's really being a picky eater and just having very simple foods. It's almost like we've tried to go through an entire build of eating healthy, and then come race day, it's just everything's out the window to some extent. We're eating candy and sugary drinks, so it's a good time. But yeah, I think, just from research, a key point here is like a single day carb load, 10 grams of carbs per kg is sufficient to really maximize glycogen stores in already trained athletes. So that's kind of what the research shows, a 2002 study that I'm referencing here. So you don't need an entire week of eating pasta. You need more than just one dinner the night before. And so, my approach is just practicing this before big long runs. Just really setting yourself up for race day so there's no surprises. All right, we're going into mistake number 3. So, winging the race morning breakfast. That is a key mistake. If you're going to some race hotel, just hoping, oh, maybe the continental breakfast is open the morning of the race. Nope, try again. Let's try to do that once over. So, again, as we're talking about this dress rehearsal concept, we're in the training build. We are doing everything that we can for our long runs or long workouts to simulate what works for us on race day. So if you typically have, white bread, toast, and honey, keep up the white bread, toast, and honey. That's kind of your go-to. What we ultimately want is a carb-rich breakfast that is, 3 to 4 hours before the gun. I think 4 hours is kind of ridiculous. These races are very early in the morning. I wake up about 3 hours and 10 minutes before, have my breakfast 3 hours before, and that's kind of my go-to before taking gels during warm-up and such. But again, 3 hours, for some newer runners, I think this is a pretty foreign concept to be up, ready, awake well before the race. So you just want to really have simple fuel, so simple refined starches, bread, white rice, white bread, bagels, simple as possible. And you can even have that 2 hours before. 2.5 hours might be optimal for some people. I personally prefer 3. So it's again, this is something that comes with experience. I just find that I am personally awake when I come to the actual race when I've been awake for 3 hours. So some examples of breakfasts that are low in fat, low in fiber. I said, low in fat is kind of, somewhat optional the day before, 2 days before the actual race. This is where it's pretty key. Unless it sits well for you, then, everyone's their own sort of experiment. So do what works for you. This can be oatmeal, so quick oats. This could be bananas and honey. This could be a bagel with jam or multiple bagels. Those are all good options. I even know people that will have white rice or white rice and honey. Rice cakes are good. They're portable. So that allows you that window of time, the 3 to 4 hours, 2.5 to 4 hours, because we just want to be inclusive of everybody. That allows you time for your gut to clear and clear everything, and your blood glucose to really stabilize. So if your race starts super early, just take some of those considerations into mind of when you want to wake up, when you want to have your breakfast, and what is your go-to breakfast on race day. Most people are religious about this. Let's see, other things that people can have. Morton does sell this interesting bar that's kind of made of different syrups and rice as well. And I think it's about 100 grams of carbs, or it might be 80 grams. And you can also top up your grams of carbs for that breakfast with a sports drink, coffee with sugar, tea with sugar, whatever that might be. As a go-to, this is kind of what we want to shoot for. I thought I had it in my notes here, but I think for that morning breakfast, 75 to 100 grams for that morning breakfast is pretty key. I'd say most people, it ends up being 85 to 100 grams of carbs for that morning breakfast. And if you can get closer and closer to that 100 grams for the morning breakfast, I think that will really ensure that you are topped up before the race starts, before the gun goes. I personally try to shoot for 100 grams. I think I have 1.5 to 2 white bagels with honey. That's kind of my go-to. Depends on the grams of carbs in that brand of bagel that I buy the day before. White bagels, the least amount of fiber possible. This is what I shoot for. And yeah, the last point is, nothing new on race day. So if you haven't eaten before on a long run or a workout, it's probably not a good bet. Different things like yogurts, they can have like different dairy products or dairy ingredients in it. And so I think we just don't want to have some sort of negative reaction that's just suddenly a surprise because in the last second you decided to get that from the breakfast buffet. And just to sort of summarize and conclude this section and the third most common mistake to avoid, just from research, pre-exercise carb meal that is 3 hours before significantly improved time to exhaustion versus fasted exercise. It's kind of a no-brainer, but I do have to say it. I guess the other one too, there's a research paper from 2022. It showed that adding fructose to a carb-rich breakfast improves cycling endurance capacity. So we're also trying to think about a balanced breakfast in terms of the types of carbs you have. And that's kind of why we have some sort of simple sugar, honey, and then some sort of refined starch that's sort of a slightly more complex carb, but still a very refined carb. So that's our bagel or white rice, whatever that might be. All right, mistake number 4. So trying a new gel, drink, or product on race day. So they may have free samples at the expo. Your friend might give you a gel at the start. The course offers something new along the course. You may need to take it, depending on if it's an emergency. But ultimately, we just want to keep it as reliable as possible. So we want to keep this a closed system. One key stat here that I have from a meta-analysis is that 30 to 90% of endurance athletes experience GI issues during competition. So really the primary cause of that is not practicing an immense amount during training and showing up to race day and everything just goes off the rails. Really, it's when we try something new on race day. That's kind of the core, common, or root cause. Your gut adapts with repeated exposure to a certain kind of stimulus or what we give it. And so we just want to keep practicing that because we know that it can handle what we've given it before. Let's see, in terms of other key points just on this topic, I still practice opening gels at marathon pace and sticking to reliable brands that I know and love. This is my brand that I have, Precision Hydration Fuel. This is what I use as my emergency gel. This is what I have as a gel after warm-up and about 15 minutes before race time. I actually found that the caffeine version of this gel also sits well in my stomach. And so again, I'm just going to keep coming back and using this as long as I possibly can. I think as a personal story, I think my first marathon, it was the Philly Marathon. I was using some goo gels and some Morton gels. It was a very odd combination. I felt like every single time that I would absorb or try to digest the goo gel, that would get stuck in my throat. I would choke for a bit. I felt like my heart rate was going up. It was not a good time. And the other thing too that I hated on certain gels was just that it was really tough to tear the top bit of the gel to then absorb it or to be able to run with it for a half kilometer to a kilometer as I'm slowly sipping the gel, letting it sit in my mouth, sort of waking up my brain, waking up my body. But yeah, that's kind of a key thing there. And then just another key point, I think I've cited this one in a previous video, but a high carb diet really increases your SGLT1 transporter density in the intestine. So this improves absorption and reduces GI distress. And so in general, we just want to be practicing taking in a ton of carbs. It sort of speaks to some of the points I mentioned in the second or third common mistake about having a very carb-rich dinner, the night before a big workout. All right, we're going into mistake number 5, underfueling during the race. So I think the really common one that I've heard recently from athletes is that they get to a certain point in the race and they look at a gel and they're like, nope, can't take the seventh one. So you've had a bunch of gels throughout the race, everything's going good, and then at a certain point in time, your blood is rushing away from your small intestine. It's not feeling great. You're getting tired. You don't want to take that next gel, or people are just taking far too little in terms of the grams of carbs per hour. So yeah, those are a number of key things. As we've mentioned in the previous video, we do want to be taking 80 to 100 grams of carbs per hour. There's a 2026 paper that kind of dives further into this and really shows a lot of evidence that even intaking up to 120 grams of carbs per hour can be more beneficial for a lot of endurance, performance-related events. That's kind of a new ceiling that science is really pointing towards. I think people have been aware of this for the past year or two. But the catch is that higher intake is typically associated with more stomach problems. So really the solution is not to back off on your carb intake during the race, but it's really to build up gradually and then kind of find the sweet spot of what works for you using fluids, gels, and chews rather than just solid foods. So really slowly ramping it up in training. Most gels end up being 20 to 40 grams. I think it's pretty optimal when you have something like Precision. It would be 30 grams per gel. There's not too many that you have to carry, but each one has a sizable dose to it. And yeah, just trying to find the right combination so that you're just basically hitting that exact grams of carbs per hour. So it's almost dependent on the type of gel that you have and that works for you. And then continuing to use that across all your long runs and going into race day. Last couple points on this. Know your math. Every single gel is different. The ingredients are different depending on the brand, depending on the gel. And so, we really don't want to wait until race day to sort of find that out and find what works and what doesn't. By consuming more carbs during the race, you're slowing the rate your liver burns its own stores and holding off the blood sugar crash, holding off fatigue. So as a TLDR, an overall summary, more carbs in equals less fatigue equals you run faster equals coach gets happy, athlete probably happy too. That's the overall mechanism. And those gels are just depositing energy into your account so that you can save more and use more during the race.